for being available for this special called meeting, because we wanted to finish up with Sue's, explanation and kind of, getting the information on all of the different sectors in the CCAP, and we had 3 left. So really appreciate your attendance. And we're going to call this meeting to order at 2:04 p.m. and we will be done at 3. So thank you all so much for making the time. And we're going to go right into it. So Sue, are you ready?
I am ready.
Excellent.
We're going to do this. So what I'm going to do, can you all see my screen?
No.
Yes.
No.
I see you. I can't see another.
Oh, no, you're supposed to be seeing a slide.
I'm not.
I don't.
No.
No slide.
Keep working at it. It'll happen.
Share content. Okay, here we go. Let's try this. See if this works better.
Differently every time.
I
know
it. Like it's going to happen.
This is horrible. Last night I was on a call with Heritage Oak Cliff, and I was trying to share my screen, but the little thing across the bottom with all the buttons disappeared. So that was not. Yeah.
So Sue, the controls now are in the Teams meeting itself, the little arrows up at the top to navigate,
Okay.
just so you know.
Can y'all see my screen now?
Yeah.
Yes.
See it.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes, thanks.
So just very quickly as a reminder, this one's probably the most recent one we've talked about because it includes the Urban Forest Master Plan. Overall, we're trying to leverage green space, increase and maintain our green space, and integrate nature-based solutions into our designs as we move forward. And there's the infamous Urban Forest Master Plan, what we worked on over the last year. Can y'all make sure your mics are off? Because I'm getting some feedback. Okay, so we worked on assessing opportunities for blue, green, gray infrastructure to kind of augment our existing gray infrastructure. We did adopt the Urban Forest Master Plan. We've been promoting tree planting efforts. We will have a Branch Out Dallas event this fall for Texas Arbor Day. And we've been working with both Texas Trees and with our Parks Department on nature-based solutions and on planting additional trees.
Hey,
So
Sue,
with that, what?
we are not seeing the slides advance if you're advancing the slides.
I am advancing the slides.
Okay, I'm coming.
What? All right.
They're not moving for us, Sue. That's what she means. We're just still on the home slide.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, like I said, I guess they changed their tool and don't
So
tell.
why is it doing that? This is so weird.
Do you want to go back to your regular way of doing it?
Yes.
Hi,
I
everyone.
hate this.
There,
Thank
let's
you.
do
I
this.
thought I'm in the office today.
No,
That's
look,
what I did. I went to it's this
City
one.
Hall. How cool.
Yeah,
right
so
there.
you opened it in this is a different way of doing it. It's instead of sharing your screen.
Oh.
So you want to go. Is it this?
Uh-huh.
Is this the presentation?
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
So
Now I see Tony.
there you go. Is this the slide you want to be on?
Yep.
Perfect.
Can y'all see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Yes.
this is the whole enchilada. It is the table out of the back of the CCAP with all of the actions under goal 6. The ones with leaves by them are the ones that we are currently working on. And so with that, I will open it up to ideas on other things that you think we need to expand on, or if you want us to continue doing some of the things that we're working on. And I'm not hearing anything.
Sue, is that a question specific to go to this chart right here. Is that what you're saying on these data point, on the items you have, active items?
So
Or-
this is the world of goal 6. The goals that have, or the actions that have a leaf to the right are ones that we are working on in the 2021 work plan.
Right.
I am asking whether you would like us to continue efforts along those and or expand our efforts into some of these other actions. Or if you have other things that you think we need to be looking at.
Yeah, I have a question, Maria Bocalandro. So we have a green space plan for the city?
I'm sorry, are you asking if we have a
Yes.
green space plan?
Yes, I mean, an open space. I don't know.
I don't know that it's
Espacio
called
Xavier.
that.
Mhm. But I think it's important. I mean, I totally agree with the goal. I agree with those actions and the steps you're taking. But a city like Dallas, it should have an open space, green space. I don't know what you call it, where you can see it as a system. And so my question
Probably
is,
the closest that we would come to that would be the parks master plan. That includes parks, green space, and trails that connect between them.
so there's got to be an alignment with that plan and what we're proposing there. And so my question now is there an alignment, and the priorities of investment and action, are they aligned with that plan? Question.
To some extent, yes. One of the other things that is guiding our efforts is one of equity and looking at heat island impacts, particularly for implementing actions under Goal 6. We're looking at trying to green up some of our spaces that are hotter and or drier and or less green than other parts of the city, and doing that as a priority rather than just going out and planting trees wherever. So it is nuanced. It is guided by our heat island map. It is guided by neighborhood equity considerations, more so than an open space plan.
And so would each of these tasks have a key performance indicator? Like when you say increased tree canopy in both private and public realm, do we have a baseline of what the canopy is and how much it's going to increase? There you go.
Yes. Can
Very
you
good.
see my screen?
Yes, I see it.
So we have targets.
Very good.
We have an existing canopy cover right now of about 32%.
Mhm.
The increases don't look like they're a lot, but when you consider tree loss or canopy loss through tornadoes, through disease, through development, they're fairly realistic. So these targets are what we are measuring success from. The actions themselves become a yes, no. That's our pathway to getting there. But the end of the day is we're measuring against these original baseline numbers.
Great. Thank you for answering the question.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay.
Sue, Tracy has a question and a number of
can't
others
see
do
you
too.
guys. I can just see the screen. And
Right,
so
and
you're gonna
that's
have to
why,
tell me.
that's why I'm saying Tracy has a question and then a
Okay.
number of other hands are up too.
Okay.
Thank you, Sandy. Sue, my question is, when we get around to Arbor Day or prior to that, and when you've got existing community gardens that might also benefit from falling into the green space, how are we reaching out to these communities?
Communities or community gardens?
Well, the neighborhoods, generally speaking, and then the community gardens as well.
I think we're asking two different things. So, relative to Arbor Day, we do citywide promotion through the community centers, through social and regular media, through churches, other local entities to reach the neighborhoods. To be perfectly honest, most of the community gardens are focused on food, not necessarily tree canopy. And so we have not been reaching out to the community gardens relative to Arbor Day.
Yeah, I was mostly thinking about, though, the neighborhoods that they touch and how it's marketed to the neighborhoods where we know the digital divide is greater.
That's where we put a lot of information as far as posters in local stores, in our community centers, any place that we can. We're somewhat limited by the number of staff relative to doing things like going door to door. But we try to reach people where they are. We also include information in the neighborhood newsletters that go out from our planning and urban design group to just about every neighborhood in the city.
Okay. But those of us who are on this task force will receive information, and if we know some community partners, we can just share it with them.
Please.
All right, thanks.
That would be great.
Okay, Tracy, are you done?
Yes, thank you, Sandy.
Okay, great. The ones whose hands are up that I have next are Michael, Araman, Alan, and Rita. So Michael, you're up.
Great. Hey, Sue, would you put that up larger on the screen again, please? So because I had a question on it that I now have to see it again. First of all, quickie is, does this also connect in any Trinity waterway and watershed activities? Is that on the water thing? Is that where we distinguish parks and green spaces and trees? Should I put a box around that, or does this somehow, because I'm just curious about that aspect on what you're talking about here.
I gotta be honest, I don't understand your question.
Well, there's the whole Trinity watershed and all of the aspects of that are all over our city that I don't see mentioned anywhere here. I hear about city parks and trees and all that. That's why I can't remember in the plan if somewhere else, the Trinity aspects, the creeks, the rivers, the areas adjacent to and part of that and in the water, if that's in our plan anywhere, and I just didn't see it here, so I'm guessing it's elsewhere.
I would assume that falls into assess opportunities for blue-green infrastructure in the public realm to reduce flood risk. It's that nexus between our waterways and the habitat adjacent.
Sure. And that's what flood risk is one thing. That's, that aspect. The other part is just quality of life and development and pollution reduction and all that. And I think of, groups that are doing that work in the nonprofit sector, et cetera. I just don't want to belabor that now. I'll give some more thought to it and send you a note about that.
Okay. Well, one of the other things that kind of gets into it from a biochemical aspect is nutrient cycling along flood corridors relative to carbon and nitrogen, but that's a whole different animal, and we don't go to that level of detail in this plan.
The other thing I was going to ask, I'm guessing that, if Jeanette's not here, obviously this is her area of expertise, and I always learn a lot from her and like what she has to say. I'm sure she's been very focused here. So I have less to say here, but in my areas, I've always thought about, okay, who beyond the city are the critical stakeholders and partners to make these goals move ahead at a desired pace or even greater? So could you just comment real quick about who are the critical outside other stakeholders for the city here that are going to really make all this work? So it's a community effort and not us all relying on you guys at the city to get everything done, right?
So that's a really good and a really important question. We have some fabulous partners, and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings if I leave someone out, but obviously we've been working with Texas Trees. We've been working with the Nature Conservancy. They just completed a really interesting study for us on benefits from green infrastructure and how they can offset the need for heavy duty, traditional pipes and flood control, can kind of augment our gray system. So they've done that work. We've worked with Texas A&M, both their Transportation Institute and also the AgriLife Extension up off of Coit Road. We've done quite a bit of work with the Trust for Public Land relative to physically accessing property that has good, strong environmental value for protection and or use it as a park. And so those are three that come to mind immediately. We have been working with SMU. We have been working with UTA. We have been working with both Paul Quinn and UNT down in South Dallas. Those are people that come to mind immediately that we work with on a fairly regular basis. There are others, but those are the ones that immediately come to mind.
Okay. Well, and again, I always bring this up, but Dallas is what it is. This is a business-driven community, and I think it's fair to say that a lot of the reason we have green space and canopy issues and all that are because of massive build-out and development of our city. Have you thought about the commercial real estate community or the multifamily community who, again, I think should have a role and responsibility to help reliven in our city what has been lost due to development. And and those are private sector entities that could use some of their profits to fund and make these things happen.
So we have, and I think we've spoken about this before. Dallas is one of 8 cities internationally, 2 in the US, to belong to the City Business Climate Alliance, which is working with the C40 cities, the Carbon Disclosure Project, and the World Council on Sustainable Development, which is it's a public-private partnership towards implementing the measures in the CCAP. I've been working with the mayor's office, and we hope to kick that off in early August. So we are specifically working through that partnership with our local business community to this end.
Okay, well, as that goes forward later in the year, I think some of us might want to help connect some other entities, like I said, and
Sure.
Mike, just because I have some relationships there in the commercial real estate industry that would be great participants, it sounds like to me, in that collaboration. So I know
Okay.
we're quite scheduled today. I'm done for now, but thanks
Okay,
for
cool.
discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Armin,
Welcome back, Ariman.
Hey.
welcome back. My
Yes.
goodness.
Yes, it's been a while. Thank y'all. I'll be quick because I know, we're short on time. I think when I see this slide, the thing that stands out to me is that the first bullet, increase and improve access to green spaces, particularly within vulnerable communities, to reduce impact of urban heat island localized flooding and improve public health. To me, that's the only bullet on this slide that explicitly names equity. And the others are all good things that, all of these things can be done in an equitable way or not. And I know that equity is a focus of the city. So just wanting to just ask for reassurance that all of this work is being done in an equitable way and that we're prioritizing equity as we're working through all of these things.
I think that's a really important point, Ariman. It's interesting because we're pulling data right now for our third quarter reporting. And we just had a whole conversation with our tree folk that wanted to know how they were implementing, what they were doing to implement the CCAP. And the first 2 purchases of property that came out of the reforestation fund, one was for Woody Branch, which is down in Council District 3. The other was and that was like 75 acres of woodland. The other was 125 acres down off of I-20 and Dowdy Ferry. Both of those areas are deep in an area where we have vulnerable communities that don't necessarily have access to green space. So I will tell you the first 2 purchases of really sizable chunks of land for green space, both to preserve the woods and to provide access to green space. We're in parts of Dallas that are identified as being vulnerable.
Cool, thank you. And
But
yeah,
I do
and
think, I will say, I do think carrying that forward into the next year is probably an important thing for us to take a look at so that we continue work in that realm.
awesome. Yeah, thank you for that context and for, yeah, looking at carrying that forward.
Thank you, Armin. Next up is Alan Hoffman, and we've been joined by Jeanette.
Oh, hey.
Hello.
Hello. I wanted to talk about the first leaf, which is access opportunities for blue-green infrastructure in a public realm to reduce flood risk. Some of these issues can be really addressed in terms of the development code, but not necessarily for public property. One of the things that I'm wanting to make sure that's taken into account in looking at this and how to manage and improve the tree canopy is to actually provide a simple way to support irrigation, and that's through rain gardens. The moisture content, and that the rain gardens are we get 2 pluses with the rain garden. We get flood management, and we also get the soil moisture support. So that's a simple, I don't know if that technique is being considered in some of the public locations, because we'll have stormwater runoff off of large tracts of land that go directly into the street or into the sewer system, end up in the Gulf of Mexico in 3 days, and maybe we should keep a little bit of it for our trees. So that's how our rain gardens can be integrated. So on the public side. And on the private side, I drive around town and I'll see large, facilities where you'll see a giant pond, future pond. It's basically a detention pond. It's open. It doesn't necessarily those ponds are designed to run off quickly and evaporate. With the rain garden, there's less apt possibility of that happening. And it's also a great way, again, to support the tree canopy, because rather than having the moisture evaporate or run off downhill or get directly into the sewer system once the storm has happened, those ponds are just designed to slow the water down. They do, but rain gardens slow it down even more. So I think those are not tremendously high cost issues for developers to do. I'm doing it on a development, and it's wonderful because it's going to protect the tree canopy. So that's my thoughts, and I don't know how we integrate that into the public space and also into the private development code.
Actually, my friends in sustainable development, as part of their review of parking regulations, are looking at greening factors and at looking at both using alternative pavement, but also using rain gardens, using both wet and dry ponds to do just what you have suggested. And they're looking at it as a change to the development code. So I anticipate with their work, it could be that gets pushed forward into both public and private sector a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
I'm excited you're doing it already. That is half the battle.
Well, it took some time explaining it down at Akmok, but
Oh dear.
In fact, that slowed my project down. So
I'm sorry.
Okay, Alan, is there anything else?
No, that's it. I just wanted to make sure that was under consideration and something being looked at, because our rainwater is free and it causes flooding issues. Well, let's keep it and store it and use it. So.
Right. Okay, thank you, Rita, and then Jeanette.
If we could back up to the slide we just had, that would be good. But
okay.
I just wanted to note to everyone that there was a bill offered that died, unfortunately, to support the last bullet, the nature-based solutions and the funding for it. Representative Zwiener, I believe it was HB 2350, wanted funding for nature-based solutions provided by the Water Development Board. It got a hearing, but it never got the vote it needed to move forward. So just keep that in mind when the next 2 years roll around, because it certainly isn't a part of this special session. But the other thing I wanted to ask is, Susan, in relation to bullet number 1, when you were naming off property that's been bought, didn't the city council recently buy the property next to Shingle Mountain?
We did, and well, actually, it's more complicated than that. We are acquiring that property, but I don't know that we bought it. I think we bought it through cleaning it up.
Okay.
And as far as land planning for that area, that is still something that is being worked on.
Okay.
At a much higher pay grade than me.
Okay. Well, I just remember the talk about it in the media, and I kind of lost track of it after that. But I wanted to ask about that. But, you know, to me, you've heard some others. I think that's our priority, is trying to get those green spaces for the underserved communities. So,
okay.
But thank you. That's all I had to say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Jeanette?
I think I'm unhooked here.
There you are.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that there's a lot of things going on in partnership with the city that are things that are on here and things that are not on here. So in terms of trees for watershed management planning, we're talking to the Nature Conservancy about that. And I've talked with the state director, the new state director, and with Kathy Jack, and we feel that might be something that we need to look at and maybe overlay that with a map that we're creating for tree planting, and in terms of different, and there's probably 22 different layers. One's equity, one's watershed managed, or one's either urban heat island, all of these different layers to help us prioritize where we're going to plant trees. And Susan, one of the concerns I think that I have is we're not really getting any kind of report of where trees are being taken out or where or how many. And so I'm not so sure that even the lands that we're purchasing to save trees are keeping up with the lands that are losing trees. And I'd like to be able at some point to see what our losses as well as our gains are, because the trees that we're losing are big trees and they are providing the most benefits.
That's interesting. I haven't thought about it, but I think it's a pretty important point.
The other thing I want to say to the group is that, you know, if you're looking at southern Dallas south of 30, that's the highest percent of tree canopy, and our low kind of income neighborhoods are there. So when you look at the mapping, what you see is you'll see kind of urban heat islands where there's big parking lots or things like that. But in southern Dallas, if you're looking from an equity perspective, it's protecting the trees, not so much planting trees in that area. So I think that we really need to look at protecting trees as well as planting trees, and as well as kind of tracking what we're losing, because we can't be doing the research we did it in 2015 and again in 2019, and we can't keep, it's expensive So if we can kind of track what's going on in Dallas and where, that's going to help us, I think, better achieve our equity goals and objectives. So I think as we move forward, there's a lot of things. The Texas Trees Foundation right now, we have a workforce program we're working on with the Texas Workforce Commission. And we're going to be looking at how we can maybe support the city through that program, as well as all of our projects have to be managed. That any tree that the Texas Trees Foundation puts in the ground, we water that tree for 2 years. So there's a lot going on, and I think I hope that one thing that this committee does is make sure that they bring all of everybody that's doing stuff together once in a while. So we're not tripping over each other, so to speak. But we're personally, the Texas Trees Foundation is working very closely with the city of Dallas. And we're here to support. We're not here to tell them what to do. But I think that the research and this mapping and these things that we're doing certainly will help guide us all to looking at the urban forest. And Mike, back to your point about the Trinity Forest, that's managed completely different than our street trees are.
Right.
So Susan is, I think, talking internally about how that's managed as opposed to what the street trees and park trees are. Because that's an urban forest, but it's actually a more traditional forest resource.
Right.
So anyway, that's where we're at, and I hope that helps kind of bring some clarity that we are trying to put some action to these items.
Appreciated.
Thank you, Jeanette. And I'd like to add my feelings about what Jeanette said about development taking out a lot of trees. There's an example just a few blocks from my house where we had a shopping center that had 50-year-old trees in it, and the shopping center was demolished, and Walmart came in and they wanted a certain footprint for their building, and so all the trees went, and instead of that, they complied with what our development code requires now, which are these tiny little trees and these little islands sprinkled throughout the parking lots. And so we lost tree canopy that the trees there were 50 years old, and these little tiny trees are going to take 50 years to get anywhere near what the trees looked like before. It would be great if we could encourage development that would be a little bit more flexible in how they develop that property so that perhaps they could save some of those trees instead of, tearing them all down and just putting up these tiny little trees. So I just think that could be an aspect of our parking, overhaul that we're trying to do in the development code to hopefully protect some trees and just encourage. I know we're trying to do that in a lot of aspects with the arborists going in and consulting with the developers. How can we save some of these trees? But when you have an organization like Walmart that has a desired development plan footprint, they just come in and they just, take everything down. So, that I'd like to.
So angry to hear.
So that I would like to see it as the city is overhauling their parking ordinances and then the development code. Maybe in Forward Dallas, we could do something related to strengthening our ability to require that more trees be left. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now, but that just really
I think
bothers
it's
me.
important, and what you have said reflects some feedback that we got from one of the park board commissioners when we presented the urban forest master plan. And his question is, who is asking the tree question when the plans are getting reviewed? And I think it is a critical question, and I think it needs to be in that conversation. So
Well, I think the
Katie and I will
answer-
forward that. I'm
I
sorry.
think the answer is that the arborists are looking at the development plans. That's part of what their job is to look at the plans as presented and then work with the the owner of the property to try and keep as many trees as possible, but I just don't think that we have exactly enough teeth to, in our rules to really make sure that we can save more of those trees.
I will
Anyway.
tell you, I worked on a project where they had probably about 250 trees that were slated to be removed to build a nature trail. And arborists from 2 different departments were there. And I asked them what they were doing to protect the trees, and they told me their job was not to protect the trees, but to assess the caliper inches that would require contribution to the reforestation fund. And so I think we have some opportunities for training, and maybe a different view on that, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, part of our tree preservation ordinance was that you kind of just look at replacing. I used to complain it was more of a tree replacement ordinance than a tree preservation ordinance, because it would look at the number of caliper inches that were removed and how many inches would have to be put in to replace that. But you're removing major trees that have been there for 40 and 50 years, and you're putting in tiny little trees, but a lot of them. So, I just think that we need to take a look at that. We did update our Article 10 tree ordinance, but I just think that the whole idea of trying to work harder to preserve these green spaces and these trees needs to be looked at in Forward Dallas and as we're doing our parking ordinance.
Yeah.
So anyway, like I said, that's my thing. And also just could we take 1 minute, and I know we're kind of getting past our time here, but for you and Jeanette to talk about the tree inventory, I think that's very important. That's something we need to focus on in this coming year.
Sure. I want to defer to Jeanette, and the reason I'm hesitating a little bit is that's something that's still in the works, and I have not talked with my counterparts in the tree departments. I think they're working on a plan to do a tree inventory. I know Jeanette is working with workforce development to do some similar work, and I don't know that we necessarily have made that connection yet.
So you want me to respond, Susan?
Sure.
So we are setting up a meeting to talk about that. And, there's been a couple of voices around. One is looking at LiDAR to do tree inventory. LiDAR doesn't give you the kind of information we need, especially in terms of having trees that could be a liability. So you really, for a good tree inventory, you have to have boots on the ground, so to speak. And so what we're looking at is doing some boots on the ground in parks and along public right-of-ways. Part of this mapping that we're doing will also give us kind of where we need to look at starting to do some tree inventory. So I think those conversations are yet to be had, but that we're all kind of thinking it needs to be done sooner than later. But how do we prioritize where we start, and how do we begin to look at those trees that are our biggest liabilities? And so my guess is that LiDAR can be used in some areas, but not where there is high traffic in terms of parks or downtown areas, or where there's a lot of foot traffic and bicycle traffic in particular. But I think to know what we have to maintain, we have to do the inventory. And will we inventory Trinity Park or Trinity Forest the way we inventory the street trees? No. We're going to be, the Texas Trees Foundation is going to be really looking more at the street trees rather than Trinity Forest to inventory. And, it might we might, with EAB coming, EAB is not going to affect our street trees, we don't think, as much as it will affect the Trinity Forest. And it's about 13% of our forest overall tree canopy is ash trees, and that's not a huge amount, quite frankly, compared to what some cities have had for ash trees. So we need to get out there and look from that perspective as well. But it's to be determined.
Well, thank you for the update. I mean, I really appreciate that. So, okay, everyone. Sue, do you feel like you're done with this section? We've got about 15
I think
minutes.
so. We've got not very much time to do 2 other ones, but I think the next ones we've got are relatively simple. The next one, relatively, I say, actually, this one has a lot to it too.
Would you please
Goal 7 is access to healthy food. I will tell you that we just selected a contractor to do a food and urban ag plan for us, and we're excited about that. And I think it will help us meet a lot of the objectives under this particular action in the CCAP. Additionally, on the very last bullet on this slide on food waste, we are updating the local solid waste management plan with our friends in the sanitation department, and food waste and organics are a big focus of that effort. Again, we've got targets that we're trying to reach. And with that, I'm gonna beam down. These are the ones that we're working on this year. And the 2 FA9 and F14, we are working with both our special events department and also our procurement department to try to have more sustainable events overall with local food, recycling, diverting that food, which is still edible to people, composting at the very end, but those are some things that are all in action right now, and I would anticipate that we would continue this work in the next year. So with that, this is the first group of, I'm going to go to full slide, I think, just because it's probably going to be easier to, is that easier to read?
Yes, it's necessary. Thank
Yes.
Okay.
I know
Yeah, because otherwise
Michael had,
it's really tiny.
yeah, I just noted Michael had asked that we make it bigger so we can see it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So on these, the ones we're working on have little wheats rather than leaves. And I will also tell you, just because it doesn't have a wheat or a leaf on it doesn't mean we're not working on it. A lot of things that we've got in the mix may not be in the plan, but we're certainly trying to move them forward. And then I'm going to go one more slide up, which is another one. This one has actually a lot of community interest and a lot of goals in it. I would anticipate a lot of the actions in this category are probably going to be addressed as part of the food and urban ag plan that we are just now, I anticipate getting that contract to council on the last part of August. These are the actions that I anticipate continuing in the following year, and I'm happy to open it up to some quick questions here.
Okay, so Michael has a question and then Maria has a question.
Okay.
Again, because of access and equity and probably stuff that Armin's thinking of, again, any coordination with big food companies to help drive these activities ahead and bring access of quality, healthy food to every corner of our community?
So I anticipate expanding our food advisory council beyond community gardeners to urban farmers, to supply chain folks, and to some of the large grocers, not only large grocers, but the chefs, and the Restaurant Association. One of the lessons learned from COVID is we have a bifurcated supply chain relative to food. And we need to find some ways of kind of knitting those two supply chains back together. And so I would anticipate pulling some of those folks into the Food Advisory Council.
Okay.
Bob, do you have other ideas on that or want to add in?
Yes, I've actually got all of those things and some more. I discovered new organizations I didn't know existed a week ago. So I absolutely am in line with what you're talking about so we get the whole food chain involved. And we'll be talking about that this week, by the way.
Cool. Maria?
And Michael, are you done? Because Michael?
I am, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Maria?
Yes, I participated in the beginning of that urban ag call a lot, and then I delegated it to another person from Dallas College. Well, actually, one of our faculty members was there, but is no longer in urban ag. But Dr. Brenda Floyd of Cedar Valley was also participating, and I saw a lot of work around zoning and an ordinance. And this is my limited understanding, but if I live in the city of Dallas and I have a surplus of eggplants or something, and I want to put them out on the curb and sell them, apparently you can't do that. But there was a proposal of a new, I think it's a zoning, some type of regulation. I just wanted to know, is that contemplated in that urban ag plan? I mean, where is that piece of, it's a legislation or regulation so that people that have a home garden can distribute that food or sell it? I just have that question. I don't know where that is.
That's a great question, Maria. I know that one of the efforts from the Urban Garden Group is that code analysis. We've also reached out to our city attorney's office. We are aware that we have several existing codes and ordinances that may be limiting to what we can do in this food and ag world. And so what I anticipate is that as part of our urban ag plan to be identify what code changes we need to make and do them all at once. Because there will be a public input part of that, and it'll go to council. It may have to also go to ZOAC before we take it to council, because it's likely to be in our development code. So that is on our radar. It's at the baby stages where we're kind of getting that checklist of ordinances like that are somewhat self-limiting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just think it's important to do more than declare that we are for urban agriculture. We have to take away the barriers. And some of these barriers are the legislation or the guidelines we have. And if we don't take away those barriers, it has an impact on organic waste. It has a huge impact because, I mean, if you have a surplus of a certain, food that you did in your garden and you can't do anything with it, then it's going to have an overflow on other city services like waste.
Right.
You're going to get flies or whatever. I think it's important to do a comprehensive, but also put a sense of urgency, because there's many places in our city that are insecure from a food point of view as well, and are also going through the pandemic and economical crisis. So I don't know, I'm not a legal person, but could there be a transitional kind of, or do we have to wait until the whole zoning thing goes through. I'd like.
So our process, and Sandy can attest to this, we don't make anything easy. And our process is somewhat lengthy. I don't want to go through it right now and then find out that if I had just tweaked an A to a V or some other language at the end of our study, I have to go back. I don't know that I'm doing myself any favors, because then it's, well, why are you coming back now? Didn't we just approve this? And so I would rather get our whole enchilada together and take it at once and do a more comprehensive update to our ordinances related to food and ag. And maybe that's me, maybe we need to look into it, but just from my experience on doing ordinance updates, and I don't necessarily want to say anything bad about our council or our processes, but I like to be efficient with my time in that realm.
Would, Sue, do you think that going and looking at some of our current development code portions that deal with this would be part of the update to the Forward Dallas plan?
I think it's going to be part of our update on the comprehensive food and urban ag plan. It will likely come in on the Forward Dallas plan, but I anticipate too that we'll be done with the urban ag plan before the Forward Dallas plan, so that whatever we come up with again feeds back into that plan.
Do you mean done with it in terms of as a separate piece, which then gets rolled into Forward Dallas, or?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay. But it would have been approved already and gone through all the processes by the time the Forward Dallas plan is completed.
Right.
Or even starts.
I don't want to jinx them, but yeah.
I mean, that's really going to be an extensive process. And
it is.
I do think that the Environmental Commission is going to want to take quite a role in that, in the areas that they're most interested in. Okay, Maria, are you done?
I will say that we have begun the review of the ordinances, but there's a whole lot there, and so we're not done. And I would anticipate that as we look at things in that ag plan as they come up, there will likely be other things identified where we're self-limiting. And that's my other reason for not going forward now with what we know now. I think it all kind of ties together.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Armin, you're up next, followed by Alan, Tony, and Rita.
Yeah, I would just, like similar to what Maria was saying in terms of ordinances around selling produce, I think it would be helpful for us to also look at ordinances that affect how restaurants and grocers, what they do with food at the end of their life cycle, especially I believe both of those groups throw out large quantities of edible food. And if there's things that we can do policy-wise and incentive-wise to change that, I think that would be really good, especially because they deal with large quantities of food.
Agreed.
That's all, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Armin. Alan?
With regard to the Food Advisory Council, I'm assuming that you've had input from Bonton Farms and feedback on what they're doing in relation to dealing with food desert. The other thing is, and this is related, not directly related to food, but incredibly related to food, was that I saw DART just recently announced that they're going to be changing their routes so that more crosstown buses are going to be available in areas to eliminate, the 4-hour bus rides for someone in Bonton and areas in the southern sector to get to a grocery store. Hopefully that's been addressed, because I know DART was renegotiating they were up, the tax was up that they received from the city for the DART. And I think that was the impetus to drive that, because there was so much complaint about the reduction of bus routes in the southern sector and areas of the town where people couldn't get to a grocery store in less than 4 hours there and back. So is transportation a component? I guess my question is transportation as a component of this? I know we're talking about urban ag, but we're also talking about food and getting food to neighborhoods that don't have grocery stores.
I would think it should be. Again, we're at the beginning of this plan, not the end.
Mm-hmm.
So at the beginning, we can very well say, let's look for opportunities in and around food or in and around transportation.
And also development incentives, because for, the reason some of the stores, I guess, aren't going in these areas is they're not as profitable. Is there a way we can break the barrier to help get somebody, some of the, even support a local store from in becoming an outlet for the sale, much like Bonton's doing in terms of their product. But maybe we come up with a plan that incentivizes and supports the local growing and the urban farmer. So
I suspect my friends in the Office of Economic Development are doing that with the Dallas Food Initiative.
Okay.
But I do agree that there is some opportunity there.
Thank you.
Tony, you're up next, followed by Rita.
Okay. Does the urban ag plan include acquiring tracts of land and building acres of commercial greenhouses?
Not right now. We don't even have a contract for that plan yet. So, if that makes economic sense, we might. Or we may do smaller greenhouses closer to where the people that need the food are on spare tracts of land that the city manages. There's a lot of ways of skinning that. So we might, but right now it's not in the plan because we don't even have that contract approved to do that plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Rita, you're up.
Yeah. Mine kind of piggybacks with Alan. Somewhere along the line, I thought I had heard that Kroger was going to be, besides, farm products out of the ground, like fruits and vegetables, that Kroger, I thought, Susan, was going to do some kind of mobile truck for underserved communities. Is that in the works? And then my second question behind that is, when do you guys project this Food Advisory Council will be put together, since Katie said it hasn't been formed yet?
It has not. On the Kroger food truck, I believe that is one of 6 projects that the Office of Economic Development has underway right now. I don't remember if it's Kroger specifically or another grocer, but I know they have a project like that in the works. And if you'd like, I'm happy to reach out to them and get back with you on that. And then the second question, I'm sorry, was,
when is the Food Advisory Council to be formed? And yeah, I would like to hear more about the Kroger thing.
Okay. The Food Advisory Council is in the process of being formed right now. And the reason is our contract for that plan will be going to council in August. I would really love it if we would have that Food Advisory Council in place to be able to advise on that plan as it goes. So some of these scope related questions that you're asking can be brought up at the beginning of the process and pulled in a yes, no, yeah, it makes sense kind of way as part of the potential recommendations coming out of a plan like that. So the idea is to have them in place no later than September, so that once we begin this plan, we've got a body where we can bounce ideas off of. I would love to clone you guys because you've been really helpful to us. And I'm hopeful that our Food Advisory Council will be similar as far as, providing good input and providing good food for thought, pun intended, as we move forward on it. So if you have an interest, reach out to Bob, let him know.
Okay, thank you all. It is 3:04, so I've been made a liar. I said we'd be done by 3. We have another topic, one left, air quality. I know some folks have to go. If we have enough folks that are willing to stick around for maybe another 5 or 10 minutes, one reason that we're running over is because there's such great participation here. Everybody is asking great questions and giving Sue exactly what she needed to have from us.
Yeah,
So,
no, I appreciate your time. If you're able to stick around, it would be great. This one is not large, but it is one that we've had a local expert have in the news a lot recently. And I think it is an important one. Truth be told, we added this goal. Well, let me pause and let you decide what we want to do.
No, let's go ahead, Sue. I think there's enough of us that we can go ahead and do this last one.
Okay, so originally we had 7 goals in the CCAP, and when we went out for public input, the resounding response we had was something along the line of, oh, heck no, except it was another adjective. Y'all need a specific goal for air quality. And so, and as we looked into it, we agree. We've been in non-attainment for air quality for a long time, relative to ground level ozone. Last August, they told us that we may be moving from a designation of non-attainment to severe non-attainment. The state is contesting that assessment. However, the last couple of weeks where we had some purple days for ozone, I suspect that we're going to be in that non-attainment scenario. And so with that, our need for and our ability to make concrete action relative to cleaning up our air is pretty critical. So with that, our targets are to meet NAAQS, to meet the air quality criteria and to maintain it. And we are looking at a comprehensive approach to addressing air quality. So a lot of the objectives across the plan help us. Anything that we're doing with energy efficiency, anything we're doing with decarbonizing our grid, reducing trips where people drive by themselves, that sort of thing can all help with air quality. In addition, we have 4 specific actions. So one of them is working with TCEQ to expand the number of regulatory air quality monitors. We have 1 new monitor going in near Pilgrim Drive in Southeast Dallas. The second one is to partner to install non-regulatory air quality monitors. This picture is one of those that we installed on South Pine at the X-Line Recreation Center. And we have 9 of those in place, plus 3 that are supporting some work that we're doing with the Nature Conservancy and also Texas Trees and the